So guys, we are all here. We do want to welcome you all to our webinar today. I'm just going to introduce our Miami-Dade Public Library System, and we have our wonderful staff here. Dinah on the top there. We have Hector, and we have Nicole. And I was told to introduce Nicole because she's our new staff. This is only her second week. And it's a pleasure to have Nicole here. Always a pleasure to have our library staff, Dinah and Hector. And we have a very special guest as well. Dinah, did you want to introduce him and then go ahead and take over?
Yeah. Now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce this guest that we have here today. His name is Nigel. He is a regular patron here at YOUmake. He first began going to Miami Beach, and then later started coming here at West Kendall. He does a lot of recording. He does music, poems. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but he's an overall extremely talented gentleman, and I'm very happy to not only call him a patron, but also a friend. So thank you, Nigel, for coming, and please introduce yourself. Nigel, I'm gonna leave the floor to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Dinah, and thank you, everybody, for having me. Greetings, creators, greetings. And you got it right. You hit it right on the head. It's an honor to be with all of you creators here, and I'm a big fan of YOUmake Miami, and I definitely use the services over there, and it's been a great help. So, yes, awesome. I do poetry and music, and I'm a creator as well. So. As far as the presentation and everything, are we going to get to that in a little bit, or are we just an introduction right now?
Right. So just so you guys know, Mr. Nigel did prepare a wonderful presentation. He does podcasting, so he's very knowledgeable on that. Nigel, whenever you're ready, please go ahead and share your PowerPoint.
Okay, without further ado. All right. And I'm currently sharing my screen. Can everybody see?
Yeah.
Yes. Awesome, awesome, awesome. So I'd like to start this presentation with a quote, and it goes, "If you think you are too small to make a difference, try sleeping with a mosquito in the room." Ha 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 ha, right? It's pretty difficult to sleep with a mosquito in the room, no matter where you are in the world. So never doubt your abilities and your ability to make a difference with your art. You never know who you're impacting or what you're doing with it when you create. This is Podcasting 101. Moving forward, allow me to introduce myself again. I'm an audio engineer, a recording artist, and a podcaster, as well as songwriter. I've been doing music since about 4 years old. That's me in one of the pictures you see there, the young man holding the microphone there. That's myself. And moving forward, everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it's stupid. This is to say that everyone has their own unique talent. Everyone has what their purpose is and their gifts and what they bring, their uniqueness, and only those gifts can be realized through that unique individual. You never know who you're helping, who you're blessing with what you have. So stop waiting and start creating. All right, now onto the podcasty stuff. So an essential aspect of creativity is not being afraid to fail. I say that because a lot of what stops us from being creative is fear of failure, fear of things like being judged, fear of, not measuring up. But you'd be surprised what failure can teach you. You'd be surprised how much you can learn from experiences. True wisdom is gained from experiences, not from any book. Contrary, this is a library thing. So when you put those practices into action and application, that's when you really gain the true wisdom. So as far as podcasting goes, you want to ask yourself, what is your idea? For me, I think of my interests, and I go with that when I'm coming up with ideas for a podcast and what I'd like to share with the people that listen, the people that tune in, and I try to target what I would make for the people that tune in. And I normally curate the next idea and the next idea based on what the people are already responding pretty well to. So I ask you, and I ask you to challenge yourselves to think of what you're interested in. You never know who would be interested in the same thing that you're interested in. What is your passion? Select a specific niche and go for it. Believe in your uniqueness. Think like if any of you in here a fan of video games? Well, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna mention Zelda, the Legend of Zelda franchise. And if you think about Zelda, no matter which video game you're playing, I'm gonna highlight Breath of the Wild. So in Zelda Breath of the Wild, when you begin the game, you have nothing. And as you progress through the game, based on what you have already and what you find, you get more stuff along the way. So what I like to say is start with what you have and you'll find better tools along the way. I say that because there are a lot of people who are stifled from beginning a podcast, from beginning a creative venture, because based on what they think they lack. But you'll be surprised. You can do a lot with an iPhone. You can do a lot with your laptop. If you have a tablet, if you have an iPhone, and if you have any Apple device or smartphone, smart device, you can create and you can make a show that you're passionate about and that you're pretty proud of. In a creating your ideas kind of way. And I'd like to also say that in that game, when you make meals and you go ahead to create something, you need the right ingredients. If you have the wrong ingredients, if you're familiar with Breath of the Wild, you're gonna have dubious food. And no one wants dubious food. You don't know what it looks like. You don't know what it tastes like. It's not favorable. So if you're gonna create the right podcast, the right idea, and the right niche, you gotta make sure you have the right ingredients. And you don't need a lot. You need only a few things and you'll find better things along the way. So believe in your uniqueness. Don't be afraid to fail. Select a passion, select a niche, and go ahead and start taking action on your idea. That was a short presentation, and I'm opening up the floor to Q&A and any questions.
I do have a couple of questions that we can go over with you while we have you here.
Sure.
So let me start while we hear to the people comment in the chat. What made you start a podcast originally?
Okay.
What was your incentive to start a podcast and share your experience and knowledge with the world?
So I've been listening to podcasts, been a consumer for over 10 years now. And, about 4 years ago, I decided to go ahead and make one for myself. I decided to use a podcast to help build brand awareness as well as connect and communicate with those in my field. I found that as a great way to have conversations with people that I look up to and a great way to learn from people that I look up to and also share what I know with them, and we bounce ideas back and forth off each other, and you get to see everyone else's ways of doing things, and then you fuse the two together, and there you go, you get magic.
Oh, cool. Patty has a question, which actually kind of ties them to my second or follow-up question. She's asking, what are the best platforms you use to host your podcast? And what platform do you market your podcast? And maybe you can mention Anchor, because I know we've talked about Anchor, but if you have any other ones, go ahead and let us know.
Okay, sure. So originally I used SoundCloud to host my podcast, and I also used iTunes and Apple Podcasts to distribute my podcast and host it. And then I went full on with Anchor because Anchor automatically distributes it through about 10 different platforms. Matter of fact, even more, but 10 that it shows you links for. And you search your name of your show and it comes up in various forms. It's an easier way to distribute and also host for free. So I use Anchor, and that's the best platform that I've experienced thus far. There are other paid platforms out there, but we're talking about doing more with less today. So
Yes, I believe that's a free application, correct?
that's right.
And you can also record on that as well, if I'm
That's
not
right.
mistaken. Okay,
You
yeah,
can
yeah.
record, and you can have other people join on the show and also leave voice messages to include on
Oh,
your episodes.
very,
Yeah.
very cool. What kind of advice would you give somebody who's starting out? What kind of
Um,
recommendations could you give?
Starting out in podcasting, or
Yes, somebody was interested in getting into podcasting, but they don't know how to go about getting into podcasting.
okay. Well, for starters, I'd say be a listener. Learn first. Chime in and listen to, like, find some shows, at least 5 shows, because the average podcast listener has 7 shows that they're interested in and that they follow. So at least find 5 for starters that you find interesting. And believe it or not, your reason for finding the shows interesting is because you see something in yourself in that show. You see something in yourself in the way that it's hosted and the way that it's presented, and it piques and it pokes at an interest inside yourself. So you could emulate that and move forward. Use it as a template.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah. Let me actually go back because I don't think we talked about this one that Patty also mentioned. What platform do you market your podcast in? Instagram,
That's
Facebook,
right.
and others, which ties to my own question, which was about how do you promote your show? Um, yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
So I remember that question as well. I use Facebook, I use Instagram, and I use word of mouth, believe it or not. I text people and I have conversations and let them know that I'm working on something, a passion project, and I tune them in, and then they share it. Word of mouth spreads faster than any viral content, believe it or not.
Okay.
But Facebook and Instagram are also great, and YouTube, they're great to distribute and market your show on as well.
Excellent, excellent.
Yeah.
All right. So any final comments or anything you else like to share with us? I don't know
No,
if you have to leave. You're welcome to stay during the presentation, but I don't know if you have any final comments. Because I know you're a musician too. So
Sure.
how do you work on that as well with your music and your podcast?
Is that because I was going through the chat as well? Is that a group question or is that
No,
just
that
a?
was part of my questions. I don't see any other new questions in the chat.
Okay, sure, sure. Um, well, I incorporate the music portion. I work on my own passion projects, and originally I was working with artists and other songwriters on my show. But then I got into like working with other entrepreneurs and people that create things, other creators, um, and designers and stuff like that. So it gave me the opportunity to really branch out and broaden my horizons. But I still work on a lot of music, and yeah, that's my original hat, I guess you would say.
Right. You started as a musician and transitioned into podcasting.
Yeah,
Which is cool. I mean, it doesn't matter what you're into. There's all kinds of interest. Um, my interest was mainly video, but I'm also interested in podcasting and stuff like that. We have a lot of musicians, even people who have their own business. Podcasting, it could be a valuable source for them, and it's relatively cheap and easy to do. It takes time, of course, but that's something that. Oh,
hey,
I see
also
what the message.
Hector, let me add something about the podcasting, and also you can use podcasting, if you have all the equipment for podcasting, you can also do voiceovers.
Okay.
It's also a gray area. There you go. It's a gray area. Being able to do podcasting and do voiceovers and voice acting kind of go together hand in hand because you're working with voice audio.
Mm-hmm.
So
Interesting that you mentioned that. Last week we had the voice acting and voice character development
cool.
um, webinar. And for those of you who might have missed it, we do have that available to view on our YouTube channel, or it will be posted soon. I'm not sure if it's ready yet, but it will be posted to our YouTube channel. And one final question for you, Nigel, before you leave.
Yeah.
Patty is asking, is podcasting your primary job? Um, yeah, so she was wondering about is podcasting your main focus now? Or your
No,
primary job? Mhm.
no, podcasting is not my main focus, but you know, since I've been doing audio engineering for over 15 years now, it ties right into the music branch as well as the songwriting branch. And I'm able to continue working and sharpening my skills as far as engineering and mixing goes while working on podcasts, because all of it is my voice. So,
Right, right.
yeah.
Oh, and one final question from Steven. We're going to be talking later on about microphones, but do you have a particular microphone that you recommend for spoken word podcasting or in general?
A particular microphone, I would say just find a good condenser mic. You can find a
Mhm.
lot of great condenser mics under $50, under $80. And as long as you have a nice interface, possibly Class A interface, and a nice condenser mic, you'll be good to go. But don't let that stop you from creating, because if you have an iPhone headphone, you know, you can use that as well and work with the tools you have until you find better tools. I have to beat that one on the head. I
Yeah.
apologize.
No, I get you,
Yeah,
definitely.
because sometimes when the idea strikes, you have to catch that lightning in the bottle. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
One final question. I keep saying final question because we're getting some really good questions, and I want to make sure that people get their answers for this one. Um, just looking to understand how one gets money or paid, I guess. I'm guessing with ads, and I know you have some ads. You have some, or at least you've had some ad in your podcast. How does that work, and what have you seen that as far as monetizing a podcast?
So as far as monetizing a podcast, the avenues that I've seen uh, and that I've experienced are through sponsorships and through advertisers. Um, there's another avenue that is a bit more technical, so I'll leave that one off the show. But as far as sponsorship, that's a great avenue. And reaching out to sponsors directly if you find out that you're a good fit for them. You know, filling a void that you see in a company or within a unit is a great way. You know, you can, if you see a way to solve a problem that they have, that's a great way to angle your show and angle what you do, and especially if you have the audience and the eyeballs on your show. When I say the
Mm-hmm.
eyeballs, I mean the attention, because that's also ultimately what brands and companies want. They want exposure, they want brand awareness, and if you're able to provide that for them, and especially sometimes into a very niche market that they're hoping to penetrate and break into, you can be very beneficial, and it can be a win-win relationship for both parties involved. So
Excellent. Good advice on that one.
yeah.
So with that, I'm going to transition to my presentation, where I'm gonna talk about yes, part of the equipment and some of the software that we use, as well as some other podcast tools that um, you can use to create and start on your podcast. So once again, Nigel, thank you so much for your wonderful advice, and looking forward to seeing you again at YOUmake.
Thank you,
And
Nigel.
goes to
Hey,
everybody as well. Please visit YOUmake if you get a chance. It's a wonderful place to learn and expand your knowledge. Mhm.
awesome. Well, let me just say thank you to everybody. Thank you for having me as part of this webinar. And I'm grateful that I got a chance to speak with other creators. And I'm very excited to see what comes of this. And I really enjoy speaking with you and working with you. And there were some great questions that were asked. I hope we had a chance to answer as many of them as we could. And if anyone else has anything to say before I sign out, I'm just gonna say bye now, guys, and hopefully see you later.
All right, sounds good.
Nigel, thank
Nigel.
you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate your time. Um, I actually had a question, but everybody kept jumping in, and I couldn't really ask you the question. I wanted to
Go
know,
for it.
What was the hardest part for you to like to get started, like that you like out of podcasting? You know, like what will you say you found the most difficult understanding or getting through, or that gave you a little bit of hustle, you know?
Okay, that's a great question. So the hardest part, honestly, was getting started and getting over the hump of who wants to hear what I have to think, who wants to hear these ideas. These ideas are silly, and doubting, my own uniqueness. That's why I say never doubt your own uniqueness. You never know who wants to hear your message. You never know who needs to hear your message. So never doubt the power of your voice. If you make a voice, if you make a sound, then they'll hear your voice. So speak
Awesome.
up. Yeah, guys.
Great. Awesome. Let me go ahead and again, thank you so much, Nigel, for your time. We greatly appreciate that. We will go ahead and take over.
All right.
Take
Thanks
care.
so much.
Checking out. All right. Talk to y'all soon.
All right. Thank you so much. Let me see if they can share my. And again, if you guys have any questions about anything that Nigel covered, make
Yeah,
sure to type it in the chat.
go ahead, Hector.
Thank you. Here we go. All right. So thanks once again to the wonderful Nigel for his presentation. So we're going to be discussing a little bit more about podcasting. So how do you get started with podcasting? What does it take to get it to work? So the first thing, like Nigel mentioned before, is preparation. So you want to make sure that you have like your theme or your topic that you want to deal with. You also want to see if you're gonna break it down into an episode or make it part of a series. Um, you can either script your podcast, create a script with all the notes that you're going to be covering, or you can just do a simple bullet point or an outline just to kind of guide you and make sure you're following a proper process. And that's regardless of whether you're the only person doing the podcast or if you have an invited guest or you're doing some kind of panel. Again, preparation is key. So again, going back to that is preparation is the number one thing. You want to make sure that you have some kind of script or some kind of guide as to what you're going to be covering in your podcast. A simple outline could help, or some bullet points. Like I said, even if you're doing it just by yourself, or you're doing an interview, or if you're doing a panel, preparing what you're going to be covering on that day is important. The second step is recording your episode. So getting the proper equipment, microphone, some kind of computer device. You can even use your smartphone. I know that's something that we talked last week as far as voice recording. And the iPhones, for example, come with Garageband, or you can use something like Anchor, which we mentioned. The good thing about Anchor is that it also allows you not just to edit and create your audio, but you can also post it to the Anchor website and distribute it. So you cannot do a bunch of functions using that program. And again, it's a free program. Number three that you want to get into and look out for is a place to upload or a hosting site in order to get your RSS feed. So you can either do like a website or just a dedicated web host to upload your audio files. And coming after that, you want to make sure that you have a way to submit that RSS feed to the different podcast directories. The RSS basically is the way it kind of works with podcasting on blogs. And what that is called really simple syndication. And to make it simple for you guys to understand, because it can be a kind of complicated thing to understand, is let's say that you have a particular program that you like to see or hear, but instead of going to that website or that place every week or every day to check if there's a new episode available, really simple syndication allows you to subscribe and get notifications. so that when there's a new episode, immediately you will get it on your podcast or wherever you're downloading your podcast, and it'll tell you, oh, there's a new episode available. And it's a fantastic way when you're a creator that you can distribute your podcast to different places. There's, you know, there's iTunes, there's Spotify, SoundCloud, there's different services, and they'll hit each one, because there, you know, some people are, for example, are only on Spotify and might not be on iTunes or vice versa. So you want to make sure that your podcast is as widely available and quickly updated for your subscribers, because you don't want your subscribers to information as to when the new episodes are coming up. So yeah, the RSS, it combines all the content into one RSS reader. And there are different reading platforms available. There's InnoReader, Google Reader, and Feedly. All of those are free and free to use, like we mentioned. So what are some podcast hosting options? You can either host it on a dedicated web host, like I mentioned, or you can make it as part of your website. That's usually a good way to go. If you want to tie it all together, let's say that you have a website with links to either a YouTube channel or your social media, that is a really good place to focus all your attention, and you get to interact with your audience more. But if you don't want to go through all that process, because having a website is yet another thing that you're going to have to manage and stuff. If you're only thinking about, I just want to start a podcast and dedicate myself to doing that podcast, dedicated web host will be able to handle that. So these sites offer you the space to store the MP3 files. And some web hosts offer analytics so that you can keep track of who your audience is, you know, what age range, you know, how they're accessing your information, how long they're listening to your podcast. You also get some marketing tools. Nigel mentioned some of the sponsorships, for example. You also can get different ad revenue. So each one offers different options as far as marketing tools. And of course, social sharing options, because that's your main marketing tool. You know, you want to promote it through Instagram or Twitter or anywhere where you can interact with your audience. And like I mentioned, the same people that are, for example, on Instagram might not be on Twitter or TikTok or Facebook. So you want to make sure that you have different ways of tracking and attracting viewers and maintaining your audience as well. So what are some of the web host avenues that are available to you? Well, we've put us four right over here. All of these are free to use, of course, and they generate the RSS feed as well. The first one is Buzzsprout. Podbean is a different one as well. Simplecast and Libsyn. These are all web services where you can host your files, and they offer different packages. So you might want to look into. Some are easier to use than others, but again, all of these are free resources for you to use. Okay, and now we're going to be talking about equipment. I know we were having some questions about using equipment. If you're not going to use your cell phone, for example, you want a little bit more quality in your audio recording, microphones are the way to go. And there's two main different ones that are going to be used. The simpler one is called a USB microphone, and this one plugs in directly to your computer and gets power from that. The Blue Yeti, for example, in this image is a very popular one to use. And these they have simple volume controls. So they're pretty good for podcasting or voice recording. They might not be as good, for example, for recording your voice if you're into music. If you're into something like that or want better quality and control from your audio, you want to look into an XLR microphone. These have a dedicated cable that has to be plugged into an interface. And then through that interface, you connect it to your computer. The advantage of using an XLR microphone is that you get a much better quality, and you also have the ability to control the audio much better. And finally, another option, if that's not available to you, or even if you like doing on location interviews or podcasts, you can use an audio recorder. And these are basically portable devices that store the audio files on an SD card. These are very popular with reporters or people who do like live action sports as well. And they're super portable. They offer you various formats that you can store the audio files, super high quality or low quality. And also you can record in stereo or in full surround sound. So that's a really good option for those of you who like to record. For example, if you're doing a travel podcasting, if you're a kind of person who likes to visit different places or restaurants, it's not easy to, carry around a big microphone. So a portable recorder will be a good option for you in that case. Going back to the XLR microphone, which gives you the highest quality possible, you are going to need an audio interface. There's different brands. We at YOUmake have one that is called the Scarlett Focusrite, which is the one pictured on your screen in red. But there's other different brands. There's Audio M3 interfaces, and they can either have a solo or multiple input. So you can have one or two microphones, or even musical instruments. You can also plug in a guitar or a bass, for example. They have both type of connectors, the USB-C, which is the smaller one, or the traditional USB, which is the A compatible. The advantage of using this device is, again, you have a controller that's called the gain. And what this allows you to do is to increase the audio volume without introducing distortion. Sometimes when you play with the regular volume knob, you start getting the buzzing sound and stuff in the background, which lowers the quality. But by using the gain, you're able to control that input audio volume and without introducing that static or buzzing sound. Another good thing is that you have a monitor input for your headphones, because you want to make sure that you're checking your audio levels when you're recording. Make sure that you get nice clean sound and it's not too high or not too low. So that's another option of that. And finally,
Hector, let me jump
yes.
in for a moment because we had a question from
Okay.
Steven. He was asking about the AT2020 and how does it connect, like generally the audio interface for the AT2020, how does it connect, and is it a USB?
AT2020, I'm not familiar with that, but I'll look it up right now and a little bit later in the meeting, and then we'll get back to that question. Let me do some research. AT2020. Good question. We're not going to be talking individually about all the different brands. So you can, there's so many options available, but I'll make a note of that and I'll look into that microphone. But the other side of the microphone recording equipment is the software that you're going to be using to edit your audio. So if you have an Apple computer or an Apple device, there's Garageband, which is completely free and comes with all your computer or devices. It's very easy to use. But if you don't have that, there is another option for Windows users and also Apple users and Linux, which is called Audacity. That is a free program that is, it gives you all the options as far as controlling your audio levels, doing editing, reducing the audio noise on your tracks. You can do multiple tracks. So that's a really good, highly used software. And the other one that we are going to mention is called mp3cut.net. And this is a web-based program. So the thing is, you have to upload your files to this website, and then you're able to manipulate the audio files. You can do your edits. You can insert effects or music tracks as well. You can create jingles. You can do fades. I haven't particularly used this one, but I know it's free and some people are giving it really good reviews. So that might be another option if you want to check that out. Finally, some additional resources if you're interested in learning more about podcasting is you can check out YouTube. There's a lot of videos on YouTube. If you are a library patron, you can use lynda.com for completely free. Just go to our website and go to learning and just type in your library card number and your PIN number, and you have full access to the entire Lynda services. You can learn about podcasting or video editing, Photoshop, all kinds of programs, and it's completely free with your library card. And finally, we also have some books about podcasting. Of course, we're part of the library system. And this month is the library card month. So if you don't have your library card, this is a fantastic opportunity to get it and start using some of the many different resources that we have available for you guys. So as far as books, there's three that I want to note. The first one is called Podcasting by T. Morris. Then the other one is called How to Do Everything with Podcasting by Shel Holtz. And finally, Podcasting Bible by Mitch Ratcliffe. So those are three, and there's many, many other ones available in your library. Okay, and now I'm going to pass it over to Dinah, who's gonna talk about creating a workspace for recording your audio. Again, not everybody has a dedicated room or a closet where they can record the audio for your podcast. So she's going to be talking about some tools that you can use to create your own little space for recording. Okay, Dinah. Passing it over to you.
Hey guys, once again, I'm back. And of course, again, thank you, Hector, for that great information. I hope you guys loved Nigel as much as we do here at YOUmake Miami. And I know some of us want to get started with podcasting. And maybe you don't have, let's say, all the proper equipment, like a cool sound booth like we have here at YOUmake Miami. I'm not trying to show off. I'm just trying to, point it out. But we do love to show you here at YOUmake, even if you don't have these things at home, you can still create your very own by using just simple things that you may have at home. So you have your story ready. You've decided already whether or not you're going to be a solo act or a co-host might be needed. And you have your equipment, but where are you going to record? So I have your answer here, my friends. A box. That's it. Just kidding. So this is one of the basic materials that I always like to use whenever I do DIYs. Cardboard is your best friend. Marlon knows that I keep repeating this. So I just took a simple box right here, closed box. Now you could go ahead and take off the panels if you want. I left them on simply because maybe you want to use it, you want to close it up and maybe put it somewhere else. And really the size of box, it really depends on what you feel comfortable with. It could be small, it depends where you're gonna keep it at home as well. Now, the material that I did use for the acoustics, for the sound, we happen to have this foam that I stayed with for like a year. And you could just call me the trash lady. No, I'm just kidding. I saved this for about a year and I just didn't know what to do with it. And of course, everything in divine timing, I got to use it this time around. So what I did, I actually cut it in half. Kids, I know you're at home, they're sharp objects. Please ask your parents for permission and for help, okay? Now I went ahead and cut this in half. This one's a little wobbly, but this was actually one of the leftovers. I have another one here. As you could see, it's fairly thick. So I had to cut this in half. I did it with a knife. And then once I did that, I did get a glue gun and I decided to go ahead and glue this. Now I'm gonna show you this one. I'm gonna move the camera. So I created this mini sound booth here where I put the microphone in and haha, it's not just a dark box. Oh, you can't see it. I gave it a little light. Ta-da! Okay, so here I went ahead and input all of the foam. I made sure that the corners were tight. I kind of played like a little Tetris game with it a little bit because I had to cut and fill in according to, because it wasn't perfect to size, okay? So I had to make sure that I was cutting it into different pieces. So I had to make sure that I cut it into different pieces. Now I have my microphone on. I have my, what is this thing called? The interface going on. And we need to connect it, of course. We need to put it into GarageBand. And I got myself a little light that I got from home just to give it some light, and I could see in there. And ta-da, your very own sound booth. Yay. And again, thank you so much. I'm gonna go ahead and pass it over to Nicole, who is gonna go ahead and take us even further into GarageBand and teaching you how to get started to set up your very own podcast setup on GarageBand. So thank you again. And Nicole, you're up.
Okay, hi. I'm gonna take this off so you can hear me and see me. Hi. I am going to share the screen. We're going to do a really, really fast, basic GarageBand tutorial. And here is GarageBand. This is what it looks like whenever you first open it up. And all of these we don't need because we are doing podcasting. So we're just going to open a blank, empty project with no settings. We choose that. And we wait a second. There we go. Okay, so we're going to be doing audio, and we should be using a microphone, but because I'm sitting out at one of the big computers in the middle of YOUmake, we don't have a microphone. We're just going to be going with our computer audio. So if we had a microphone, we would make sure to choose it right here. But again, computer audio, so we'll just go with that, and it's going to default. This is what it looks like when you open it up. GarageBand is really, really great to start with because it's one of the more intuitive and more simple programs to use. So if you've never done recording, start with GarageBand. You can always work your way up. There are lots of other programs out there. So the quick help button is actually super helpful. If you click on it and it turns that brownish yellow color, if you hover over anything, it will tell you about it. So if you need any help with anything, the quick the quick help is really helpful. But we don't need that right now. The library is fun to play with, but you don't really need it for podcasting. We're just going to be using voice, and if you want to change what your voice is going to sound like, these are really fun to play with. But you don't need them for podcasting. So we don't need that right now. We're going to put our library away. This is the smart controls. So down here, all of this stuff, again, we don't really need it for podcasting, so we can put that away. This, the editing, you might actually use this whenever we start editing. So we are going to close that really quick because we don't need it at the moment. And it's super blank, which is how we're going to start. We're going to add, first we're going to change this time signature. This is all for music, and we don't need a tempo. We don't need a time signature. We're not making music. We just need to see how long it is. So we've changed it straight to time, and that'll be really helpful when recording. We also don't need a count in. I know Hector loves the count in. He likes to have 4 seconds of counting before we start talking. I don't like it though, so I always turn it off. That is totally your preference. This though, the metronome or the click track, we don't need it, again, because we're not making music, so we turn that off. This is the most important button, the record button. You will need that. Really quickly, we are going to make a very short recording, just very basics through our computer audio, our microphone, computer mic, and we'll see how it goes. So I'm gonna hit record. Hi, this is Nicole at YOUmake Miami. Welcome to the YOUmake Miami podcast. To stop it, I hit the space bar, just so you know. And we are going to zoom in this scale right here. We'll zoom in so that I can see my audio. These are my sound waves. So you can see where the sound is though, even though you can't hear it because I can't share the sound right now. So wherever there's a sound wave, that's where I'm talking, or if we scroll over to the end, I know there was this big spike right here. Do you see that spike in sound? That is where I hit the space bar. We don't want that big spike in sound because whenever you're listening to that on a podcast, it's going to be a really jarring sound for your listeners to hear. So we're going to see how there's that bracket. We are going to click right there and drag it so that it erases that sound. We don't want that anymore. We're also going to go over here where there are big spaces, and I'm going to place my marker here, and I'm going to use the command T, and it's going to break my track so that I can then click and drag, because all of this little stuff right here is probably, even though you can't hear it, is probably not good and going to be jarring or just annoying for my listeners to hear. So I'm going to break all that down. And right here, there's a lot of blank space. We are going to drag that over and break that down. And then we are going to zoom back out and see where we are. That is not a very long amount of time. In actuality, it's like maybe a quarter of a second, but in the podcasting world, that's a pretty big break in time. So we're going to move it over and try and make it natural without leaving too much blank space. And then if I decide that I don't like this part right here, say I said something dumb or I didn't say it the way I wanted to, I'm going to break it, my track, make sure it's selected or it won't break, and then Command T, and I just want this right here to be gone. So I'm going to click on that and delete it, and then I can record over again. So I'm going to start right here. I'm going to hit record, and I'll be ready to record, and I'm going to say, welcome to the podcast. I hope you enjoy. And then there it is again. And I'm going to have to trim this up to make it listenable. And trim that up to make it listenable and move that back over so that there's no blank space. And that is a very, very basic tutorial on how to use GarageBand. I hope you guys enjoy it. And if you want to learn more, we have a lot of resources on our YouTube channel. Thanks, guys. I'm going to turn it back to Dinah now.
Yeah. So, hey guys, I hope you really enjoyed this podcast. Again, if you have any questions as to how we can help you or any suggestions, please go ahead and drop them into the chat and we'll get back to you.
Well, a lot of great information. We want to really just say thanks to Nigel as well. And of course, our amazing staff, Dinah and Hector and Nicole. Nicole, that was pretty good for your first webinar. You just nailed that in your first day. That was excellent.
I know. So, this is her first webinar, guys. Let's give her a virtual round of applause.
Let's be honest. It's not her first rodeo. She knows what she's doing.
Yeah.
But we really appreciate everybody coming, and thank you all, Dinah and Hector and Nicole, for the great information today. You guys make me want to go start my own podcast, and I don't really I'm not really into podcasting so much, but that's really cool.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming.
Bye-bye, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Bye.
Bye. Be safe.